Hey, families. Courtney H. Milford, the speech lady, here back with you guys for episode 3 on what is language. Okay, language. We broke down in episode 2 what is speech, and today we are breaking down what is language. So to start, the general definition of language for our purposes here, is language is a system of socially shared rules that include the meaning of words, how you make new words, and how you put words together. So the combinations. So every different language on the planet, like Spanish, English, French, has their own socially accepted rules that people uniformly know and understand, so that they are able to break down and process and understand the language being spoken. So again, to go back a little bit and break that down, so when we're talking about vocabulary and what a word means, we know in the English language, particularly in the English language, we have the same word for multiple things sometimes, right? Like, for example, the word there can be a location, it's over there, or it can mean it's their house, right? A possession, a group of people's possession. And the way we decipher that is knowing the context of a sentence, and also by knowing that words have different meanings, and then our brains have to know, okay, in this context, this is the word that we're using, and this is the definition of that word. So that's a socially acceptable, universally known rule of the English language. When we're talking about how to make new words, that sort of talks about our grammar. So our grammar skills, and that you learn either innately through your environment, or later when you go to school and you learn your grammar. Things like in the English language, when we add an S at the end of a word, that makes it plural. To us, we know that means it's more than one. So when we say the girls versus the girl, we know we're talking about a group of girls versus just one girl. Similarly, if we add an ed ending onto a verb, we know that means it was in the past tense. That's, again, a universally known rule to the English language. Okay, and then we talk about word combinations. So how do we put words together? And how in making sure that they're in the proper order. So each different language too has different word orders, and in English we have our word order, and again, it's something that's just kind of universally known and learned, and then again, can be taught in school, or for those who have a challenge with that. So that is language, sort of in a real big little nutshell. When we're talking about language, we are talking about really breaking down the what is said. Okay, speech was sort of how you say it, the how of how you use your language, but the language is actually like what you're saying, the words you're using, the grammar you're using, the vocabulary, and the word order of what you're using. So, but language, again, is sort of an umbrella term with parts underneath it. There are 3 parts that we look at when we are assessing children and adults too, for their language skills. And the first one is usually, we'll put it over here, receptive language. Okay, receptive language talks about a person's ability to understand, to process, or comprehend what they are hearing verbally, or not even necessarily verbally. It can be through reading. So again, reading comprehension is a little bit different, but it still would fall under receptive language. And when we're looking at receptive language, can a child, be read a story and answer some of those WH questions back? Can they follow directions? Okay. And again, just like with speech, in that episode, we talked about how there's a sequence, a hierarchy. So, when we're looking at like a 9-month-old, we might be looking at their receptive language, thinking in terms of, can they just distinguish vocabulary? So if you said, find your ball, could they, crawl over and pick up the ball? If you said to that really young toddler or infant, where is mama? And they look with their eyes over to mama, they might be showing you they're starting to understand the vocabulary, or point to so we do that a lot with little babies and, young 1-year-olds and things. When they're on our lap reading, where's the dog? And they're pointing. Where's the house? And they're pointing. Okay, that's showing that they're understanding receptively what is being spoken to them. Okay. Now, as children get older, we start to look at other skills like, again, following directions. And when they're younger, we're talking like one-step directions. So like, go get your shoe. So we need to see, can they break, do they follow that direction first of all? And if they don't, we might need to break it down a little bit and see what they're missing. So do they not understand what go get means? That's a concept. So sometimes kids have trouble with their concepts. Do they not understand what a shoe is? Right? You might think it sounds so simple to us, but there are some times when kids, their receptive language systems are just not connected the right way or in a way that's most effective and efficient for them to be able to follow really what's rapid English language coming at them when they're young. So again, we look, and then from there we look at two-step directions. And then as they get into school, really teachers sometimes throw out three-step directions. Okay, so put your pencil away, go get your lunchbox, and line up at the door. So can they sequence all those things? That's receptive language working and skills, and what we're looking at when we're looking at a child and their receptive language skills. Now, then as tied into the academics, as they get older, that also comes into reading comprehension, answering questions, being able to think critically in their, with the information they have, breaking it down and being able to, usually then bring it back out, which brings us to the expressive language piece. That is sort of the second underneath the umbrella. Okay. Expressive language then is what's coming out of your mouth. Okay. What vocabulary are you using? What grammar are you using? Are you using appropriate grammar? What word order are you using? And is it appropriate for the English language or the native language that a child is speaking? So again, every language will have different rules. This video is particularly talking about the English language, but when we're talking about grammar too, it also has a hierarchy because, a young toddler or a young, 2, even 3-year-old might say he goed to the store. And that's okay. We're not going to worry too much about that. But if that child is in, kindergarten, first, second grade, and they're saying, we goed to the store or we wented to the store, it's showing that they're not really understanding the rules of our language, which is that, in the case of the went, it turns into an irregular verb, but they added the ed still. And we know with an irregular verb, it changes the word from go to went, but it doesn't need an ed. So again, these are all things, and there's a hierarchy. So, if your child is doing these things, it all depends on their age. And it also depends on the pattern. So if they have one grammar error, like they constantly say her for she, her go instead of she goes, or something like that, we're not going to worry too much. But if all of their grammatical structures are showing some errors or discrepancies, and we see that it's really impacting their writing skills or their expressive language skills, being able to communicate effectively with others and get their message understood, then that's when we're gonna want to look a little bit more closely in that and see what's going on. So again, expressive language is talking about the vocabulary. Do they have a wide variety of vocabulary words, or is their vocabulary narrow and pretty specific, or pretty broad? Or, and what they're saying, what people are saying, and how it's understood. Okay, so as you might imagine, speech sometimes definitely affects expressive language. If you have a child with a lot of speech errors, speech articulation, which we covered in episode 2, it can impact how, what they're saying out of their mouth and how other people are understanding it receptively. Now, the third area of language that I want to touch on is called pragmatic. It really does fall under the expressive language category, but it's what we call social language. So how kids are using their language to follow social rules and social settings, to use their language to do things like engage with other people, initiate conversation, maintain that conversation, staying on topic in a conversation, not jumping all over the place, or knowing sort of the rules that when you talk to an adult, you use maybe different words or different formalities than when you're talking with your buddies. Okay, so a lot of kids struggle with using some pragmatic language skills, which is expressive language, and it also does cover things like body language, reading facial cues, using eye contact, interacting appropriately with peers, not saying comments that sound rude, but really learning to understand that social use of language, how we use our language, our expressive language socially, to interact and build relationships with other people. So, hopefully, that really brief overview of language with the 3 areas receptive, expressive, pragmatic gives you somewhat of an idea of the types of things we're looking at, and also would then be working on with children with expressive or receptive or pragmatic language needs. So if you have a child and you're questioning some of their skills or you're unsure if they're on track, feel free to leave a comment, to send a private message or a private email, and reach out and get connected with some of the resources available to you. Okay, I look forward to connecting with you, and stay tuned for episode 4, where we will continue diving into some of the terminology and the things that we do work on as speech language pathologists, and how we can help if you are looking for help for yourself or for your child. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy communicating.